Unsolved. Unsolved.
He thought the past was dead, until a DNA kit showed otherwise and painted his father as a serial killer. When 29-year-old tech founder Malik Carter takes a consumer DNA test during a family reunion, he expects nothing but quirky ancestry results to impress his girlfriend. Instead, the results tie his late father to a string of brutal murders from the 1980s unsolved crimes committed along Atlanta's Beltline. The revelation explodes on social media, reopening a cold case that pulls Malik into a dangerous world of buried secrets, obsessive detectives, and a killer who may still be alive. As Malik digs deeper, he realizes the truth could destroy everything he loves, and that the real murderer might be closer than anyone suspects. Quick heads up before we jump in. If you're into real stories, strange disappearances, and the kind of truths people try to bury, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. All right, let's get into it. The kit had been sitting on Malik's kitchen counter for 2 weeks, next to a stack of unopened mail and a single half-drunk bottle of Jameson. He'd ordered it on a whim during the family reunion in Savannah, when his cousins wouldn't shut up about who had more Nigerian roots and who was lying about being a little Cherokee. Now, on a warm Tuesday night in Atlanta, Malik stared at the email notification glowing on his phone. "Your DNA results are ready?" He grinned, stretching his long legs out across the black leather couch, the glow from his flat screen dimming as Netflix idled. His girlfriend Sierra was at her yoga class, which meant he had the apartment and this little secret all to himself. "Let's see what y'all been talking about," he muttered, tapping the link. The page loaded slow, like it knew something he didn't. Then it bloomed with color. West African 72%. European 11%. Indigenous 3%. He scrolled, chuckling. "Told y'all. Purebred Nigerian king." He was about to screenshot it when a bold red banner caught his eye. "We've detected a law enforcement match related to unsolved cases. Please contact our investigations unit immediately." Malik blinked. Read it twice. What the hell? The message sat there, pulsing like a wound. He clicked through, heart rate picking up. "Your DNA shares a 99.98% parental match with forensic evidence linked to the Beltline Butcher homicides, 1984 to 1988. His phone slipped from his hand and hit the couch cushion. For a long second, he just stared at it, breathing shallow. The Beltline Butcher. That was a name he'd only heard whispered in true crime podcasts and late-night barbershop debates. A boogeyman from the old Atlanta, before gentrification and bike trails, when the city bled from inside out. Malik swallowed hard, mouth dry. Parental match. That meant his father, Anthony Carter, dead 12 years. Buried in Lincoln Memorial Cemetery, with a headstone that read, "Beloved father and friend." "Hell no," Malik whispered. The sound of keys jiggling at the door snapped him back. Sierra's voice floated in. "Babe, you awake? Smells like you ordered food without me again." Malik snatched up the phone and locked the screen, chest thudding. His brain screamed two things at once. Don't tell her. Find out the truth. Malik didn't sleep that night. He lay in the dark with Sierra curled up beside him, her soft breath brushing his shoulder, while his mind spun like a broken record. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that red banner screaming across his phone. Law enforcement match? Beltline Butcher. At 3:27 a.m., he got out of bed and padded barefoot to the kitchen. Atlanta glowed outside his window-soft orange streetlights, distant hum of traffic on I-20. He poured water into a glass and tried to steady his hands, but they shook anyway. His father? Anthony Carter? The man who taught him how to ride a bike on an old cracked sidewalk in Decatur? Who ran the grill every 4th of July? Who worked double shifts at the MARTA yard just to pay for Malik's first laptop?
Did Daddy ever do something bad?
A killer? Malik pressed his palms against the counter until his knuckles whitened. Maybe it was a mistake. These DNA sites weren't perfect. People sued them all the time for false matches, right? He'd Google that later. Right now, he just needed air. By 6 a.m., Sierra woke to an empty bed and a text that read, "Went for a run. Back later." Malik wasn't running. He was sitting in his Tesla in the parking lot of Carter Technologies' Midtown office, staring blankly at his reflection in the dark screen of the dashboard. He owned this place, a 20-person cybersecurity startup pulling in 7 figures last year. His face was on Atlanta Innovators Weekly last month. His name was becoming a brand. If this got out... His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it. A second later, a voicemail icon popped up. Then a text from the same number. "This is Detective Rosalind Tate, Atlanta PD. We need to talk about your DNA results. Call me back immediately." Malik's chest went tight, so it wasn't a mistake. It was real enough that the police were calling. He threw the phone onto the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, breathing hard. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. His father was dead. Gone. You can't arrest a ghost, so why the hell were they calling him? He was still shaking when he finally walked into the office at 8:15. His assistant, Jayla, greeted him with her usual cheerful "morning, boss," but her smile faltered. Malik? You've seen this?" She held up her phone. He froze. "Seen what?" She turned the screen toward him. A trending news alert. Bold black letters across the top. Breaking. Beltline Butcher case reopened after DNA match links suspect's family. Underneath, a blurred-out photo of him taken from his LinkedIn profile. And the words that hollowed him out like a blade to the gut. Tech CEO Malik Carter cooperates with police in cold case investigation. His mouth went dry. How? He couldn't finish the question. Jayla lowered her voice. "They're saying your dad might have been the guy. From the 80s. The serial thing." The office felt suddenly too small, too bright. Every pair of eyes seemed to dart toward him, whispering behind glowing monitors. Then his phone rang again. Same unknown number. This time, Malik answered. A calm, firm voice slid through the line. "Mr. Carter? This is Detective Tate. I'm outside your building. We need to talk. Now." Malik's pulse throbbed in his ears. He glanced at the window and saw her, a tall black woman in a slate-gray suit, leaning against an unmarked sedan, eyes locked on the glass like she already knew what he'd do. He swallowed hard. "Give me 5 minutes," he said, though his voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. When he hung up, Jayla's eyes were wide. "Malik, what's going on?" He forced a smile that felt like a crack in a mask. "Nothing I can't handle." But inside, his world was splintering, and this was only the beginning. Malik's mother answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and slow like honey. "Baby? Everything okay? You don't usually call this early." Malik gripped the steering wheel with one hand as he pulled onto I-75, the city skyline shrinking in his rearview. He hadn't stayed to talk to Detective Tate. He couldn't. Not yet. The questions, the cameras, the whispers in the office. It was all too much. "Ma," he said, his throat dry. "You alone?" A pause. "I'm making breakfast for your Aunt Denise, but she in the shower. What's wrong?" Malik stared at the gray stretch of highway heart pounding. He could hear the faint sound of gospel music drifting through her end of the line old Shirley Caesar, the soundtrack of his childhood. For a second, he wanted to hang up, pretend none of this was real. But the headline was still seared into his mind. Tech CEO linked to Beltline Butcher suspect. Ma, did Daddy ever do something? Back in the day? His voice cracked. Something bad? The line went silent, except for the faint hum of the radio. Then, Malik, what are you talking about? Her tone had sharpened, clipped like glass. I took this DNA test, it says. He hesitated, staring at the exit sign for Macon. It says Daddy's DNA matches some old murder case. They called him the what? Her voice was a whip now. The Beltline Butcher. There was a sharp clatter, like a spoon hitting tile. Malik imagined her in the kitchen, hand frozen over the stove, eyes wide behind those gold-rimmed glasses she always wore. Don't you ever, she hissed, low and trembling, say something like that about your father again. Ma, listen. No, you listen. Your father was a good man. He worked himself to the bone for us. For you. Whoever told you this? They lying. People always trying to tear us down. Always. Her words came fast now, ragged with breath. Malik had never heard her like this, not even when bill collectors were calling, not when the bank almost took the house. Ma, it's not just talk. The police called me this morning. Silence? Ma? When she spoke again, her voice was thin as smoke. You stay away from them. You hear me? Stay out of this mess. What mess? If Daddy didn't do it, then. He didn't. Her voice cracked on the word. Lord help me, he didn't. Malik gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles ached. Then tell me the truth. All of it. On the other end, his mother took a shaky breath. Then another. Finally, she said something that made the hair rise on his arms. Some things, Malik, you don't go digging for. Leave the dead where they at. The line clicked dead. By the time he pulled into his mother's driveway in Decatur, his stomach was a knot. The house looked the same as always, two-story brick, porch swing swaying in the morning breeze. But something felt different. The curtains were drawn. The gospel music had stopped. He stepped inside without knocking. Ma? The kitchen smelled like burned grits. A pot sat on the stove, steam curling into the air, but the room was empty. Ma? He called again, louder now. Footsteps creaked overhead. Then his Aunt Denise appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a towel, eyes wide and wet. Baby, she whispered. Your mama. She gone. Malik's chest went cold. Gone where? But Denise just shook her head, clutching the banister like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. He yanked it out, expecting Sierra or maybe Jayla checking in. It was neither. The screen showed a text from an unknown number. You're asking the wrong questions, Malik. Stop now or you'll end up like her. His blood froze. The text came with an attachment, a blurry photo, a red scarf, lying in the middle of an empty road, the same scarf his mother wore every Sunday. The photo burned in Malik's mind long after the screen went black. The red scarf. It wasn't just any scarf, it was his mother's favorite. She wore it every time she left the house, rain or shine. And now it was lying in the middle of some nameless road like a warning shot. Malik's first instinct was to call 911, but his hand froze over the screen. What was he going to say? Hey, I got a creepy text about my missing mother. And oh yeah, the cops think my dead dad was a serial killer? No way they'd believe him. And if they did, it would blow this whole thing even bigger. The front door opened behind him. He spun around so fast, his chest almost cracked against the counter. Detective Rosalind Tate stepped inside like she owned the place. Tall, confident, hair in tight twists pulled back from her sharp face. Her gray suit looked like it hadn't wrinkled once all day. Her eyes were cool, scanning every inch of the room before locking on him. "Mr. Carter," she said, calm as a surgeon. "We need to talk." Malik's pulse pounded in his throat. "How did you—" "I followed you," she said matter-of-factly, pulling a leather badge holder from her pocket. "You left the office in a hurry. Didn't want you to think you could outrun this conversation." He stared at her, jaw tight. "You can't just walk into my mother's house. You invited me the second you ignored my call and fled the scene of a lawful inquiry." She glanced around the kitchen, eyes pausing on the burned pot of grits, the open back door. Her brow furrowed. "Where's your mother?" Malik swallowed hard. "I don't know." Detective Tate's gaze sharpened. "What do you mean you don't know?" "She was here an hour ago. I called her. Came straight here now she's gone." His voice cracked on the last word. Tate studied him like she could see through his bones. "Did she leave on her own?" "I don't know," he said again, louder this time. "All I know is somebody sent me this." He thrust his phone at her, the image of the scarf still glowing like a wound. Her eyes narrowed as she examined the photo. She tapped the screen to enlarge it, lips pressing thin. "Where did this come from?" "Unknown number." Malik's hands were shaking now. "What does this mean? Is she—" "Calm down." Tate's voice was low, steady. She swiped through the metadata on his phone like it was second nature. No location data. "Whoever sent this knows what they're doing." Malik felt the floor tilting beneath him. "They said if I didn't stop asking questions, I'd end up like her." Tate's gaze lifted to his, and for the first time there was a flicker something that looked like real concern. "Listen to me," she said, her tone dropping an octave. "Your father's name came up because of evidence that was never released to the public. Whoever's threatening you knows details only the original task force and the killer would know." Malik's stomach twisted. "You think this is connected to him? To the murders?" "I think someone doesn't want the past dug up." She slid his phone back toward him. "And that means you're in danger, Mr. Carter." Before Malik could respond, a loud crack shattered the air. Both their heads snapped toward the front window. The porch swing was rocking hard like someone had pushed it. Another sound followed, the crunch of tires peeling away on gravel. Tate was already moving, hand diving inside her blazer as she bolted to the door. Malik stumbled after her, heart pounding. By the time they hit the porch, all they saw was the tail end of a black SUV disappearing down the street. No plates. Tinted windows. Tate cursed under her breath and turned to Malik. "Get inside. Lock every door. Don't move until I say." But Malik barely heard her. His eyes had locked on the porch railing. Dangling from it was something small and familiar. A charm. Silver, heart-shaped, engraved with the initials LC. His little sister, Lena Carter. Malik sat stiff in the passenger seat of Tate's unmarked sedan as the city blurred past the windows. His hands were clasped so tight his nails dug crescents into his skin. The charm felt like a weight in his pocket, Lena's initials, pressing into his thigh like a brand. "She was supposed to be at work," he muttered. "Lena had the morning shift at the salon. She wouldn't just leave. Not without telling me." Detective Tate's eyes stayed on the road, jaw locked. "We'll find her. But first, I need you to tell me everything you know about your father." Malik's head snapped toward her. "I told you, I don't know anything. He died when I was 17. Heart attack." "That's not what I'm asking." Her tone was sharp but even. "What kind of man was he? Who did he run with? Did he have enemies?" Malik swallowed hard. He hated the questions because they made him realize how little he really knew. "My dad, he was quiet," Malik said finally. "Worked long hours. Came home tired, watched the game, cracked jokes with the neighbors. He wasn't a monster." Tate shot him a glance. "Monsters don't look like monsters, Mr. Carter. They look like people you trust. Her words sat heavy between them as the car slowed, turning off the main road into a neighborhood Malik hadn't visited in years. The streets were narrower here, lined with shotgun houses and sagging porches. The air smelled like frying grease and damp earth. A group of old men sat outside a corner store, dominoes clicking on a weathered table. "What are we doing here?" Malik asked, tension coiled in his gut. "Your father's old stomping grounds," Tate said, pulling to the curb. "This was his world before you were born. And I guarantee you somebody out here knows more than they've ever told the cops." She cut the engine and stepped out. Malik followed reluctantly, feeling every eye on him as they crossed the cracked sidewalk. The men at the domino table went quiet, their stares heavy with curiosity and something else, recognition. One of them, a wiry man with a gray beard and a ragged Braves cap, leaned back in his chair. His eyes traveled over Malik's face, then down to his shoes' Italian leather, polished to a shine. The man smirked. "Well, I'll be damned," he drawled. "Lil Tone's boy." Malik froze. Tone. That was what they used to call his father. He remembered hearing it once, in whispers at a barbecue. He'd asked his mom what it meant, and she'd shut him down with a look that could cut glass. Detective Tate stepped forward, flashing her badge. "Detective Rosalind Tate, APD. You know who this is?" The old man grinned, slow and toothless. "Course I do. Got his daddy's eyes. Ain't seen that look in 20 years. Malik's throat tightened. "You knew my father? Knew him?" The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Boy, your daddy was a legend out here." Malik's stomach dropped. "Legend? How?" The man didn't answer right away. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial rasp. "Back in the 80s, when the streets was blood, Tone was the man folks called when they needed something. Cleaned up." Malik felt the ground tilt. "Cleaned up? You mean?" The man's grin widened, but his eyes stayed cold. "I mean, your daddy wasn't no saint. Bodies dropped. Money moved. And if the butcher was hunting women back then—" He paused, letting the silence stretch like a blade. Tone knew about it. Maybe more. Before Malik could speak, a sharp crack echoed from the alley nearby like glass shattering. Tate's hand shot to her hip, gun clearing leather as she spun toward the sound. "Stay here," she barked, but Malik was already moving, heart slamming as he bolted toward the alley. "Malik!" Tate's voice chased him, but he didn't stop. The alley smelled like piss and rust, shadows pooling under the broken street lamp. His breath came hard, echoing in the narrow space. He turned the corner and froze. Something swung gently from a bent nail on the fence. A photograph, clipped with a piece of wire. Malik stepped closer, dread curdling in his gut. The photo was old, edges yellowed. He reached up with trembling fingers and pulled it free. It was his father. Younger, leaner, wearing a leather jacket and a smile Malik had never seen before. One arm slung around another man's shoulders, both of them flashing gang signs. But that wasn't what made Malik's stomach turn. It was what lay at their feet, half out of frame, half in shadow. A woman's shoe, spattered with something dark. And on the back of the photo, scrawled in jagged red ink, were 5 words, like father, like son, soon. Malik's breath hitched just as Tate appeared at his side, gun raised, eyes scanning the dark. "Malik," she hissed. "What the hell are you?" He turned the photo toward her with a trembling hand. For the first time since he'd met her, Detective Rosalind Tate looked afraid. Malik sat in the passenger seat of Detective Tate's car, fists clenched so tight his nails dug into his palms. The photo lay on the dashboard between them, its edges curling, the red ink bleeding like fresh wounds under the glow of the street lamp. "Tell me that's not real," he muttered, voice barely above a whisper. Please tell me this is some sick joke. Tate didn't answer right away. She just stared out the windshield, jaw tight, one hand tapping the steering wheel in a restless rhythm. Finally, she said, "Someone is playing a game, and they know exactly which buttons to push." Malik snapped his head toward her. "A game? My mom's missing. My sister might be next. And you're telling me this is a game?" Tate's dark eyes locked on his, sharp as glass. "Listen to me, Carter. Whoever sent this photo isn't just taunting you. They're setting a stage. And if we don't get ahead of them, someone else is going to die." Malik felt his chest cave in, breath coming shallow. He wanted to argue, to scream, but then his phone buzzed again. The vibration crawled across the dash, like a warning. He snatched it up. Another text. Same unknown number. "You're moving too slow, Malik. Tick-tock." His heart slammed against his ribs. Before he could respond, another message arrived, this one with a link. Malik's thumb hovered over the screen, hesitation slicing through his panic. "Should I?" "Do it," Tate said. He tapped. The browser opened to a grainy live video feed. Malik's stomach dropped to his knees. It was Lena, his baby sister, tied to a chair in what looked like an old storage room. Her head hung forward, dark curls falling across her face. A strip of duct tape sealed her mouth. The camera zoomed slowly, almost theatrically, until it landed on her wrist where the charm bracelet used to be. Malik's breath came out as a strangled sound. "Oh my God." Tate cursed under her breath, snatching the phone from him. Her fingers flew across the screen as she tried to pull metadata, IP traces, anything. But the screen suddenly went black, the feed vanishing like smoke. "No, no, no, bring it back." Malik shouted, grabbing for the phone. "They killed the signal," Tate said, voice clipped, all business. "This was a bounce through 3 VPNC. Whoever's behind this knows what they're doing." Malik shoved a hand through his hair, mind spiraling. "What do they want? Money? I'll give them anything." "Not money," Tate said flatly, her gaze flicking back to the photo on the dash. "This isn't about ransom. It's personal." Malik's chest tightened until he could barely breathe. "Personal how?" Before Tate could answer, his phone vibrated again, one short buzz. A new text. "Check your trunk." Tate and Malik locked eyes. She was out of the car before he could move, gun in her hand, the night air slicing cold against their faces as they circled to the back of the sedan. Tate motioned for him to stay behind her, but Malik couldn't. His legs moved on their own, his pulse a hammer in his ears. She popped the trunk. Malik's stomach lurched. Inside was a box, plain, brown, the size of a shoebox. A strip of red duct tape sealed it shut. Across the top, in the same jagged red ink as the photo, were 3 words. "Open M, Malik." For a long moment, no one moved. The hum of the city seemed to fade, leaving only the pounding of blood in Malik's ears. Tate crouched, examining the edges. "No tripwire," she muttered, more to herself than to him. She slipped on a pair of gloves and started to peel the tape, slow and careful. The lid came free with a soft sigh. Inside, nestled in a bed of crumpled newspaper, was a phone, an old burner model, cheap plastic casing scratched and dirty. The screen was dark, but as Tate lifted it, the phone buzzed in her gloved hand and lit up. Incoming call. Unknown. The sound of the ringtone was shrill in the dead night. Tate glanced at Malik, her eyes a warning. Then she hit speaker. A voice spilled out, low and distorted, crawling like smoke through the speaker. "Malik," it rasped, "your daddy kept secrets. You'll keep them too, if you ever want to see your sister alive." Malik's throat locked. He couldn't make a sound. The voice chuckled a dry, humorless sound that made Malik's skin crawl. "Time to finish what he started," the voice said, "or they both die." Click. The line went dead. Malik sat on the edge of his childhood bed, the glow from his old desk lamp casting long shadows across faded posters of Outkast and Allen Iverson. The room smelled faintly of dust, and Pine saw a frozen piece of the past. He hadn't been in here since college, but now it felt like a crime scene waiting to confess. The burner phone lay on the bed beside him, silent and menacing like a coiled snake. The words echoed in his skull. Time to finish what he started, his father's secrets. His mother gone. Lena tied up somewhere. He dragged both hands over his face, heart jackhammering. Tate was in the living room, calling for backup, trying to pull Tech from that burner and trace the signal. Malik didn't want to wait on Tech. He needed answers now. He started tearing through drawers. Old report cards, sneakers yellowed with age. Birthday cards his father signed with that neat looping script. Proud of you, son. The words made his stomach twist. The third drawer down held something heavier. A wooden cigar box. Malik froze. His father never smoked not in front of him, at least. He pried it open. Inside were envelopes. Thick, worn, their edges curling with time. The first one was stuffed with cash hundreds, maybe thousands brittle with age. But it was the second envelope that made Malik's pulse thunder. Inside was a stack of Polaroids. The colors faded, but the images sharp enough to slice. Women, young, black, smiling into the camera. Some Malik recognized from old neighborhood block parties. Others were strangers. All of them had the same thing in common. They were wearing red. A scarf, a dress, a ribbon in their hair. And in the corner of each photo, scrawled in ink, was a date. Malik's stomach heaved. He slapped a hand over his mouth, choking back bile. He couldn't stop flipping through them, like his body had to absorb the horror to believe it. The last photo in the stack wasn't like the others. No woman, just a car. A red Monte Carlo parked in front of what looked like a run-down bar. Written beneath it, Club Indigo, last one. His hands shook as he dug deeper in the box. Under the Polaroids was a folded sheet of paper, yellowed and soft from years of handling. He unfolded it with trembling fingers. A list. Names written in his father's hand, each one marked with an X, except for two at the bottom. Ruth Carter, Lena Carter, unmarked. Malik's breath caught like a fist in his throat. His mother and sister, on a list. "What the hell?" he whispered, voice raw. A floorboard creaked behind him. Malik spun, heart slamming, but it was only Detective Tate in the doorway. Her sharp eyes flicked to the Polaroids, the cash, the list spread across the bed. "Jesus," she breathed, stepping inside. She picked up one of the photos, her jaw tightening. "This is bad." Malik's voice cracked. "You think he my dad he did this?" Tate's gaze met his, steady but grim. "This doesn't look good for him, Malik. These dates line up with the killings. And that list—" Her voice trailed off, but the weight of it crushed him anyway. Malik shook his head violently. No, my dad wasn't a killer. Somebody planted this. They want me to believe." "Malik," Tate cut in, her tone softening. "Sometimes the people we love—" A sound sliced through the air, a faint buzz from the burner phone. Both their heads snapped toward it. The screen glowed with a single new text. "You found the list. Good. Now do your part. Club Indigo. Midnight." Malik stared at the words until they blurred. His mouth went dry. Club Indigo. He'd never heard of it, but the photo. He grabbed the last Polaroid, holding it up beside the phone. Same name, same handwriting. "They want me to go there," Malik said, his voice barely a whisper. Tate's jaw tightened. "Then that's where we go." Malik shook his head, panic clawing at his throat. "You don't get it. This isn't just about my dad. Whoever this is, they're not going to stop. Not until—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to, because deep down, He knew the truth. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a trap. Rain slicked the streets as Malik gripped the passenger door, watching neon lights smear against the windshield. Atlanta at night usually hummed with energy, but this stretch felt hollow. Abandoned blocks, shuttered liquor stores, stray dogs darting through alleys. Detective Tate drove in silence, her jaw tight, the wipers beating a nervous rhythm. Club Indigo wasn't a club anymore. It was a ghost. The Polaroid had led them here, an old building with boarded windows, a faded sign still clinging to life above the entrance. Blue paint peeled in long strips, revealing gray rot beneath. The place looked dead, but Malik's gut screamed that something inside was very much alive. Tate killed the engine. "Stay behind me," she said, drawing her Glock from its holster. Her voice was calm, but Malik saw the tension in her shoulders. She wasn't underestimating this. "I'm not staying in the car," he shot back. She gave him a look sharp enough to cut steel, but didn't argue. Instead, she handed him a small maglite from the glove box. "Keep this on, and stay where I can see you." The air outside was damp and heavy, the kind that clung to your skin. Malik's sneakers splashed in shallow puddles as they approached the door, its wood swollen and warped from years of rain. Tate tested the handle. It groaned, but gave way with a push. Inside smelled like mildew and old smoke. The beam from Malik's flashlight cut through dust motes, sweeping across cracked tile, overturned chairs, and a long dead bar. Faded posters clung to the walls. James Brown, Anita Baker, ghosts from a better time. "Jesus?" Malik whispered. "Quiet," Tate hissed, moving ahead, gun raised. They crept deeper. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a slow, steady beat. Then Malik's light hit something on the floor. He froze. A smear, dark, rusty brown, trailing like a dragged brushstroke toward the back hallway. Tate crouched beside it, her gloved fingers grazing the edge. She held them up to the light. Even after decades on the job, her face didn't hide the truth. "Blood," she said quietly, "and not old." Malik's stomach nodded. "You mean hours, maybe a day?" Her voice was grim. "They've been here." The message buzzed in his head. Midnight. He checked his watch. 11:42 p.m., a low hum broke the silence. Malik whipped around, heart pounding. It was coming from deeper, inside a faint vibration, like an old compressor, or, no, a phone. They followed the sound into the hallway. The smell hit first copper and rot, thick enough to taste. Malik gagged, pulling his shirt over his mouth as the beam of light swept over cracked walls covered in peeling blue paint. At the end of the hall was a door. The hum was louder now, rising from behind it. Tate pressed her ear to the wood, then motioned for Malik to step back. She twisted the knob slowly and pushed. The smell slammed into them like a wall. The room beyond was small, windowless, lit by a single flickering bulb. And in the center, Malik's throat closed. A chair, a body tied to it, head slumped forward, hair matted with blood. The duct tape across the mouth gleamed silver in the weak light. "Lena!" Malik lunged, but Tate caught his arm hard. "Stop," she barked. "Don't move. Look." Malik froze, heart tearing at his ribs. He looked closer, and the breath whooshed from his lungs. It wasn't Lena. It was a mannequin. Lifeless plastic, smeared with something that looked like blood, dressed in a cheap wig and clothes that weren't hers. Around its neck hung a laminated card. Tate snatched it, flipping it over. 5 words in that same jagged red ink. Not her. Next time her. Malik's vision blurred. His knees almost buckled. Why? Why are they doing this? Before Tate could answer, the hum started again, louder now, right behind the mannequin. A cheap burner phone, taped to the chair. Its screen lit up with a single word. Live? Then the sound began soft at first, then rising like a blade, slicing through the quiet. A woman's scream, muffled, raw. Malik's blood turned to ice. The phone's video feed flickered on. Lena, real this time, strapped to a chair in some dark place. Tears streaking her face, duct tape sealing her mouth. Her eyes wide, wild, locking onto the camera like she knew Malik was watching. The screen zoomed in on her face, then cut to black. A new message popped up immediately. 1 hour Carter, or she bleeds like the others. Tate swore under her breath, already yanking out her radio, calling for units, backup, tech support. Malik didn't hear her. His ears roared with the sound of his own heartbeat. His hands shook so bad he almost dropped the flashlight. 1 hour. He stared at the words until they burned into his brain. His voice came out a rasp. They're gonna kill her. And in that moment, Malik understood something with bone-deep certainty. Whoever was behind this didn't just want revenge. They wanted to finish his father's story. And they were using him to write the last chapter. The blue and red flash of police lights turned Club Indigo's cracked walls into a strobe of panic. Sirens wailed in the distance as Tate barked orders into her radio, her voice sharp and clipped. The crime scene unit would be here soon, but Malik couldn't stop staring at the words on the burner phone screen. 1 hour Carter, or she bleeds like the others. He felt hollow, like something inside him had been scooped out and left to rot. His hands still smelled faintly of rust and mildew from the chair in that room. The mannequin, the blood, the scream. He couldn't get it out of his head, Lena's muffled cry slicing through his skull like glass. Tate grabbed his arm, snapping him back. Malik, look at me. His eyes lifted, dazed. They're trying to make you panic, she said, her tone iron. Don't give them that power. My sister is out there. Malik's voice cracked. They're gonna kill her, and you're telling me to stay calm? I'm telling you to stay smart, Tate shot back. Because that's the only way we get her back alive. Her phone buzzed before Malik could respond. She yanked it out, scanned the screen, and her face changed. The hard lines around her mouth deepened. What? Malik demanded. Tate didn't answer right away. She tapped a button, turned the screen toward him. Breaking news alert. Body found in historic Fourth Ward Park. Police suspect connection to Beltline Butcher case. Malik's stomach flipped. They're escalating, Tate said grimly. Trying to split my resources. The article below the headline showed a grainy photo of the park's jogging trail, now swarming with squad cars and yellow tape. A woman's body lay under a tarp, the edge of a red scarf peeking out like a scream. Jesus, Malik whispered. Tate holstered her gun and started moving fast toward the door. Come on. Wait, what about Lena? Malik shouted, stumbling after her. This could be connected, Tate said, striding through the rain. We need to see the scene. Malik's chest heaved. No, that's what they want. They want you chasing ghosts while my sister. Malik! Tate spun so fast he nearly collided with her. Her eyes were fire under the neon glow. Every minute counts. I know that. But if this is their pattern, this body might tell us where they're keeping her. Her words hit him like a hammer. Pattern, the photos, the list, all the women marked in red. And his mother and sister at the bottom. As they sped through the wet streets toward Fourth Ward, Malik stared out the window, his mind racing through memories he'd buried deep his father coming home late, smelling of sweat and something metallic. His mother's tight-lipped silences whenever Malik asked about the past. He remembered the list. All those names crossed out except Ruth Carter and Lena Carter. Were they always supposed to be next? They hit the park 15 minutes later. The scene was chaos blue lights slicing the night, uniformed officers keeping gawkers at bay. The rain had turned the jogging trail into a ribbon of mud. The body lay under the tarp, but Malik didn't need to see her face to know the killer's signature. The scarf. Always red. Tate flashed her badge, cutting through the crowd. Malik followed close, heart pounding like it wanted out of his chest. The medical examiner lifted the tarp just enough for Tate to see. She didn't flinch, but Malik saw her jaw tighten. "Who is she?" Tate asked. The ME handed her a clear evidence bag. Inside was a purse, soaked dark from the rain. Tate flipped the tag. "Maine's Tanya Briggs," she said. "Reported missing yesterday." Malik swallowed hard. "Another name from the list?" Tate's eyes flicked to him, grim. "Not that I saw." He stared at the body, bile rising in his throat. "Then why kill her? Why now?" "Message," Tate said flatly. "They want us to know this isn't random." As if on cue, a uniformed officer jogged over, breathless, holding a small evidence bag. Inside was a folded piece of paper, smeared with rain and streaked with something darker. Tate opened it, her eyes scanning the jagged red letters. Malik leaned over her shoulder, reading the words that froze his blood. "She's not on the list. But you are Malik? Tick, tock." Malik's vision tunneled. The rain pelted his face, cold and sharp, but he barely felt it. His heart was a drumbeat of terror and fury. "They're coming for me," he whispered. "No," Tate said, her voice steel. "They want you scared. They want control. We're not giving them that." But Malik barely heard her, because in the back of his mind, something had shifted, something dark, something primal. This wasn't just about saving Lina anymore. This was war. Malik stood under the park's floodlights, rain dripping down his face, his clothes plastered to his skin. The words on that note pulsed in his head like a wound. "You are Malik, tick, tock." Tate barked orders to officers, her voice a calm blade slicing through chaos, but Malik couldn't hear her. Not really. All he heard was the ticking of an invisible clock Lina's life, draining with every passing second. He moved away from the crowd, boots sinking into the muddy grass. His pulse roared like thunder as his mind clawed at the fragments. The list, the names, the Polaroids, the pattern everyone missed for 30 years. He grabbed the photo from his pocket, the one with the Monte Carlo and Club Indigo, last one, scrawled on the back, his father's handwriting. Or was it? Malik stared at the jagged letters, something gnawing at the edges of his memory. The strokes weren't neat like the birthday cards his father wrote. They were angry, erratic. Tate's voice cut through the storm. He turned to see her striding toward him, rain slicking down her gray suit, eyes sharp and relentless. "You're not thinking straight," she said. "Talk to me." He shoved the photo at her, voice ragged. "This writing, it's not his. My dad wrote clean, perfect letters. Whoever did this?" "They wanted me to believe it was him." Tate scanned the back of the photo, her brow furrowing. "You're saying your father was framed?" Malik shook his head, fists clenching. "I'm saying this isn't about him being the Beltline Butcher. It's about finishing a story someone else started. Someone who hated him enough to ruin his name even after death." Tate's eyes narrowed. "You got a name in mind?" Malik hesitated. Then a memory surfaced like a corpse breaking water. A tall man with a scar down his jaw, sitting on their porch when Malik was 12, laughing with his father, low and secretive, while Malik's mother watched from the kitchen window, face tight as a fist. Uncle Dre. Not blood, but close enough. The kind of man who always smelled like gasoline in trouble. The man his mother called a bad influence. The one his father stopped hanging with before everything changed. "Yeah," Malik said slowly, voice dark. "I think I do." Before Tate could press, a voice crackled through her radio. "Detective Tate, we've got something." Her head snapped toward the sound. "Go." They sprinted back toward the cluster of squad cars where a tech crouched under a tent, laptop glowing against the night. "We pulled metadata off the video stream," the tech said, fingers flying over the keys. "Signal was bouncing, but we caught a timestamp embedded in the frame. What's the location?" Tate demanded. The tech hesitated, then turned the screen. A map flickered into view, a blinking red dot pulsing like a heartbeat. Malik leaned in, breath-catching when he saw the street name. Memorial Drive. His chest tightened. That's near my dad's old shop. Tate's eyes locked on his. What shop? A garage. He used to work there before Marta. Been closed for years. Jesus, Tate muttered. They're pulling you back to his roots. This isn't random. The radio crackled again. Another voice cutting through the storm. Detective, we've got units en route to the address now. But before Tate could respond, Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. He yanked it out, his gut curdling when he saw the screen. Unknown caller. His throat went dry. He hit accept. Malik, the distorted voice rasped, curling through the rain like smoke. Still chasing ghosts? You've got 30 minutes now. Malik's blood iced. Put my sister on. Let me hear her. A muffled sob answered him, sharp and raw, followed by a scream that sliced through his bones. And the voice returned, calm as death. Tick, tock. The line went dead. Malik stared at the screen, his reflection warped in the glass. 30 minutes. He turned to Tate, his voice a low, dangerous whisper. They're not killing her. Not tonight. Before she could stop him, Malik was already moving toward his car, toward Memorial Drive, toward the garage where the past waited with blood in its teeth. And deep down, under the fear and the fury, a darker truth twisted in his gut. If this really was Uncle Dre, Malik wasn't calling the cops. He was going to kill him himself. The rain hit harder as Malik sped down Memorial Drive, wipers slashing furiously, his heartbeat pounding louder than the engine. Every muscle in his body was taut, locked on the blinking dot burned into his mind, the old garage, his father's old world. He blew past traffic lights like they weren't there, tires hissing on wet asphalt. 30 minutes. Maybe less. Tate's voice rang in his head. Stay smart. But smart felt like a luxury now. This wasn't a case anymore. It was blood. It was family. The garage loomed ahead, crouched in the shadows like a rusted beast. The sign was gone, just jagged bolts where the letters used to be. The chain-link fence sagged inward, its padlock cut clean. Malik slammed the Tesla into park, barely killing the engine before he was out in the rain, flashlight in one hand, a crowbar in the other snatched from his trunk like a lifeline. He pushed through the fence and approached the side door, its paint blistered and peeling. A faint light glowed from inside, spilling through cracks in the wood. Malik's pulse roared. He pressed an ear to the door. Nothing but the whisper of rain and the thud of his own heart. He shoved it open. The smell hit first oil, mildew, and something coppery beneath it all. Blood. The light came from a single bulb dangling in the center of the shop. Shadows stretched long across the concrete floor, broken by hulks of rusted car frames. Tools hung on pegboards like silent weapons. And then, a sound, soft, ragged, a whimper. Lena, Malik's voice cracked. He moved fast, sweeping the flashlight across the space until it landed on her, his baby sister, tied to a chair in the far corner. Her curls hung limp, face streaked with tears, duct tape gagging her mouth. God, Malik bolted across the floor, knees skidding on slick concrete as he dropped beside her. It's okay, I got you. I got you. He tore the tape from her mouth. She sobbed, sucking in air like it was life itself. Malik, her voice was shredded, trembling. It's a trap. A shadow moved behind him. Malik spun, crowbar raised, just as a figure stepped from the dark. Tall, broad shoulders, a leather jacket slick with rain, and a face that stopped Malik's breath cold. Uncle Dre. Older now, gray in his beard, a deep scar cutting across his jaw, but the same cruel smile Malik remembered from those porch nights. Well, well, Dre drawled, voice low and jagged like broken glass. Lil Tone's boy. Always wondered if you had your daddy's heart. Malik's grip tightened on the crowbar. Where's my mother? Dre tilted his head, that smile widening. You don't get it yet, do you? Where is she? Malik's voice was a growl, vibrating with rage. Dre chuckled, a sound that crawled under Malik's skin. Gone, just like she wanted. Couldn't face the truth. Couldn't face what your daddy really was. You're lying, Malik spat. Oh no, boy. Dre stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Your father was the butcher. Every slice, every scream you think Tone just worked on engines all night? No, he was cutting something else. And I was his right hand. Malik's stomach lurched, bile scorching his throat. No, my dad wasn't. He was, Dre hissed, his face twisting, voice rising with a fevered edge. And when he died, he left it unfinished. 13 names on that list. 12 crossed out. You know who was last? Malik's breath caught. His mind screened the answer before Dre spoke it. You, Dre said softly, almost tender. Lil Tone's blood. The final piece. For a moment, Malik couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The crowbar trembled in his grip. Dre's smile sharpened. Come on, boy. Make Daddy proud. Finish what he started. Spillin' blood, it's in you. Something inside Malik snapped. A raw sound tore from his throat as he swung the crowbar with everything he had. The steel connected with Dre's forearm as he raised it to block, the clang echoing through the garage like a gunshot. Dre grunted, staggering back, but he was fast for an old man. His fist shot out, catching Malik in the jaw, white fire exploding behind his eyes. He stumbled, tasted blood. Dre lunged, grabbing for the crowbar, and the two of them crashed into a stack of tires that toppled like dominoes. Malik! Lena screamed, her voice breaking. They grappled on the slick floor, breath ragged, hands slipping on rain and sweat and blood. Dre's strength was monstrous, fueled by something feral. Malik fought like a man possessed, every blow powered by rage, fear, and the promise he'd made himself. She doesn't die tonight. But Dre was winning. His hand closed around Malik's throat, squeezing, crushing the air from his lungs. The edges of Malik's vision went black. Dre's face loomed above him, grinning like the devil. Say it, Dre rasped. Say you're your father's son. Malik clawed at his arm, vision dimming until his fingers closed on something cold and hard. A wrench. Heavy. He swung blind. The wrench connected with Dre's temple with a sickening crunch. The grip on Malik's throat vanished. Dre toppled sideways, blood spraying across the concrete like paint. Malik staggered to his feet, chest heaving, every muscle screaming. Dre lay sprawled, twitching, blood pooling beneath his head, but his eyes were still open, blazing with hate. This don't end, boy, he gurgled, coughing red. You ain't killin' the monster. You are the monster. Malik raised the wrench again, fury trembling through him like a storm. Tate's voice ripped through the roar in his head. He froze, turned. She was in the doorway, gun drawn, eyes locked on him. Behind her, red and blue lights bled into the rain-soaked night. Drop it, she commanded. Malik's hands shook, the wrench slick with blood. Dre groaned, trying to move, and Lena sobbed in the corner. Everything hung in the air rage, grief, the weight of generations balanced on the edge of a single breath. Rain drummed on the metal roof like war drums. Malik stood frozen, wrench slick with blood trembling in his grip. Dre lay on the floor, half conscious, blood streaming from the gash in his skull. But that grin, that sick grin, still twisted his face. Malik! Tate's voice was iron, steady but urgent. Her Glock was raised, trained on him. Drop the weapon, now. Malik's breath tore in and out like fire in his lungs. The wrench felt alive in his hands, humming with rage and something darker, something that scared him. Dre's words slithered in his head. You ain't killing the monster. You are the monster. Malik looked down at him, at those bloodshot eyes blazing with hate and triumph. Dre wanted him to do it. Wanted him to cross the line and wear it like a brand. Malik, Tate said again, softer now, but sharp as broken glass. You do this. You don't come back. Don't give him what he wants. Lena's sobs filled the space. Please, she choked out, voice raw, wrists bound, tears carving rivers down her face. Please don't, Malik, please. The wrench slipped in his grasp, clanging to the floor. Malik collapsed to his knees, sucking in a breath so jagged it sliced his throat. His hands shook as if they belonged to someone else. Tate moved fast, kicking the wrench away and yanking Dre onto his stomach with brutal precision, cuffing him as he groaned through blood and broken teeth. You're done, Dre, she spat, her voice flat and cold. You're never seeing daylight again. He coughed a laugh, spraying red across the concrete. Think it ends with me? Nah, baby. It's in the blood. Always was. Tate ignored him, calling for medics and backup on her radio as she cut Lena loose. Malik pulled his sister into his arms, clutching her so tight he thought he'd break her ribs. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing until her whole body shook. Is Mama? Malik's voice cracked against her hair. Lena's silence was a blade in his gut. Then, in the smallest voice, she whispered, she tried to warn him years ago. Tried to leave. He said he'd kill us both if she did. Dre, he told her everything before she disappeared. Malik's heart dropped like a stone. She knew? She knew, Lena said, trembling. And she hated herself for staying. Tate crouched beside them, her face hard but her voice gentle. We'll find her. Alive or... She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Paramedics stormed in with stretchers. Officers followed, cameras flashing, radios hissing. Dre was hauled to his feet, blood dripping down his face, but his eyes never left Malik. That grin carved across his battered face like a scar you can't scrub clean. See you soon, Lil Tone, he rasped, before they dragged him out into the rain. Malik watched him go, every nerve screaming for a second chance at that wrench. But he stayed still. For Lena, for himself. 1 week later, the sun blazed over Atlanta, bright and brutal, but the warmth didn't reach Malik. He stood in Lincoln Memorial Cemetery, his suit heavy on his shoulders, staring down at a new headstone that gleamed too clean in the dirt. Ruth Carter, beloved mother, 1962 to 2025. They'd found her 2 days ago, in a shallow grave behind a burned-out church in College Park. Tate said she'd been dead before Malik got that first text. He didn't cry at the funeral. Couldn't. His grief was a hollow thing, sharp around the edges, but empty in the middle. Lena stood beside him, her hand gripping his like a lifeline. Tate lingered a few feet back, her gray suit crisp as ever, but her eyes softer now, watching him with something almost like pity. Or warning. You good? She asked quietly when the others had left. Malik didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the next headstone over. Anthony Carter, beloved father and friend. The same words as before. But now they felt like a lie carved in stone. Was it him? Malik's voice was low, hoarse. Was my dad the butcher? Tate's silence stretched until it hurt. Finally, she said, we may never know. The evidence. Some points his way. Some points to Dre. Some points to both. She paused, her eyes locking on his. But Malik, you're not him. You hear me? You get to choose what you are. He stared at the names carved in granite, the wind carrying the faint hum of traffic and cicadas, the smell of cut grass, sharp in the heat. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, expecting a text from Lena or maybe Tate, but the screen made his blood run cold. Unknown number. Family ties don't break, Malik. Round 2 coming soon. His hand shook, gripping the phone until the glass threatened to crack. He looked around the cemetery, at the endless rows of stones, at the blue sky overhead, and felt something dark coil inside him. He didn't reply. Just slipped the phone back into his pocket, jaw clenched, eyes hard. Because if round 2 was coming, Malik Carter wasn't running anymore. Not every story ends with justice. Some just stop where the paperwork does. But if you listened closely, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we ignore, the assumptions we let slide, the voices we tune out because they don't come in the right tone. Somewhere, someone's living with the fallout of this story, not as a headline, but as their everyday. So if this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Shine it forward. Ask more. Doubt what's too quiet. Because what we choose to see, or not see, decides what happens next. Like, comment, share, not for clicks, but for clarity. Because awareness is how silence breaks, and how truth finds daylight.